So what happens when a dream you've had your entire life just seems to die? Well, today we're going to dive into the story of Dan Self. He's an elite sailor who hit a massive wall, walked away from his sport entirely, and then somehow found a second shot at Olympic glory in a way nobody expected.
I mean, listen to that. Those are the words of a guy at a serious crossroads. After a decade of just grinding, the one thing he'd been chasing his whole life felt like it was over. This was the moment Dan Self decided, you know what, I'm done.
Okay, so how did he even get to this point? To really get the burnout, you first have to understand the sheer commitment. We're not talking about some casual hobby here. This was 10 years of his life, all pointed at one single massive target, the Olympics.
And this timeline, wow, it really puts it all into perspective. You've got 5 years just getting the foundations down, and then another 4 years of intense, hyper-focused Olympic training. The big goal was the 2020 Tokyo Games. But when that moment finally came, he didn't make the team.
As Dan himself said, he just felt like he wasn't going anywhere. Can you imagine that? Pouring everything you have into something just to feel like you're stuck in neutral? That feeling led to a total shutdown. He took a full year off, completely convinced his sailing career was a thing of the past.
But then, something completely unexpected happened. An event that he probably thought would be pretty painful to watch turned out to be the exact thing that relit that fire inside him.
So the Tokyo Olympics, the ones that got postponed to 2021, finally came around. And Dan was there, but he wasn't competing. He was working right there on the sidelines of the sailing events. And being that close, watching those races, it did something to him he never saw coming. And that was it. That was his light bulb moment. It wasn't about regret or what could have been. It was this powerful realization that the dream wasn't dead. It was just sleeping. And watching those games, he knew, deep down, he had to be at the next one.
So the dream is back on. But this time, it couldn't just be an emotional, let's try again kind of thing. He couldn't repeat the past. No, this time had to be different. And that led to a really logical, calculated process to figure out a whole new way to get back to the Olympics.
He laid down one major rule for himself, a total non-negotiable. He had to do it alone. No partners, no crew. He wanted 100% accountability. It was a mental reset, right? If he failed, it was on him. And if he succeeded, that victory was his and his alone.
Okay, so with that solo rule in place, the list of possible Olympic boats got pretty short. There were just 3 choices. The Laser, which was his old boat, the iQFOiL, a type of windsurfer that flies, and the KiteFoil, which is basically a surfboard pulled by a giant kite that also flies. Now those last 2, they're foiling sports. If you're not familiar, foiling is where a wing under the board lifts the whole thing out of the water. You're literally flying at crazy speeds. All right, first one to get crossed off the list, the Laser. He had already spent years grinding away on that boat, and look where it got him, burnout. To really make a fresh start, he knew he couldn't just go back to the same old thing. It was time for a clean break. Next up was the iQFOiL, and this decision was purely practical. He looked at the insane physical demands of foiling a windsurfer at that level and just felt like his body type maybe wasn't the perfect match. So that left just one option on the table. And here we are, kite foiling. This is one of the newest, fastest, and frankly most spectacular-looking sports in the entire Olympic sailing lineup. You're not on the water, you're flying above it, on that hydrofoil, getting ripped along by a massive kite. It was a totally radical change, but it checked all his boxes.
So the decision was made. There was just one teeny tiny problem. He had never done it before. He had to learn this incredibly complex, high-speed sport from scratch. Absolute zero. And it's pretty relatable. He actually procrastinated for a couple of months before starting. But once he finally took the plunge and learned to kite, it was instant. He was completely and totally hooked. This wasn't just a strategy anymore. It was a brand new passion that completely changed his connection to the water.
The way he describes the difference is just awesome. Traditional sailing, right? It's tactical, it's on the water. But kite foiling? He calls it a 3-dimensional experience. It's not just about wind and waves. It's about managing flight. You're not just racing. You're flying above the water. You can even jump. It was, as he says, a completely different feeling. A total rewiring of everything he thought he knew. So, with this new obsession and a crystal clear goal, a new journey began. This one was aimed squarely at the Paris 2024 Olympics. And this time, he decided he was going to bring all of us along for the ride.
And this number, man, it just hammers home how huge this challenge is. Less than 2 years. That's it. 2 years to go from a total newbie in a new sport to, hopefully, an Olympian. The clock was definitely ticking.
And that's why he started his YouTube channel. It wasn't just about his own story. It's about sharing the whole process, the good, the bad, all of it, and actually giving back. He's putting out tips, guides, and advice for anyone else who wants to get into sailing or kiting. He's proving it's never too late to learn something new.
Dan's story is just an incredible example of resilience, isn't it? It kind of shows that sometimes the end of one road is really just the beginning of a much cooler one. And it leaves us with a really powerful question to think about. When you're faced with that kind of burnout, with the death of a lifelong dream, what does it really take to find the guts to start all over again?